All right, in this episode, I share my history with politics and my current political views. I'll start with my political background. For most of my life, I did not care about politics. The first time I voted was in the 2016 presidential election primaries. I knew nothing about politics, and I simply voted against Hillary Clinton because I did not think that she was genuine. So therefore, I voted for Bernie Sanders. And I did not vote in the general election because I did not really like Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. I thought they were going to be equally bad. In 2018, I voted for governor of Illinois. Again, I did not know anything about politics, and to make a decision, I saw a debate between the Republican Bruce Rauner and the Democrat J.B. Pritzker. They both didn't seem that great, but the thing that stood out to me was that Pritzker did not answer questions directly, and this was extremely frustrating to watch. This immediately made me not trust him. Therefore, Rauner got my vote. I really started to get into politics in a semi-serious way during the 2020 election. I heard a podcast where Sam Harris interviewed Andrew Yang, and Andrew Yang sounded, at least relatively reasonable, especially compared to the other politicians that I heard from, and he presented ideas that I've never heard before. He seemed genuine, and he inspired me to learn more about politics. So I hopped on the Yang train, and I really wanted him to be president. I donated to his campaign, and I tried to convince all my friends to vote for him. So when he did not win, I just threw away my vote in the general election. So eventually, I had a serendipitous talk with my brother about politics, and my brother took my political thinking to another level when he introduced me to people such as Milton Friedman, Tom Sowell, and other great political thinkers. All right, so that was a bit of my background into politics, and now I'll share my current political views. So it's a bit hard to categorize my political views in any particular ism. I side with different parties for different issues. If I had to describe myself as something, though, I guess I would say that I am libertarian-leaning. I resonate with Nassim Taleb's idea that he's a libertarian at the federal level, he's a Republican at the state level, he's a Democrat at the local level, and he's a socialist with family and friends. So this idea makes a lot of sense to me. I surrendered to the idea that there are no perfect government systems in the material world. All systems have their problems. However, I believe that if large societies can be arranged such that the individual's pursuit of their own economic self-interest simultaneously benefits the economic self-interest of all others, that system has the best chance of succeeding long-term. Or, to put it more simply, achieving social harmony through the pursuit of self-interest. So you become wealthy by serving your fellow man. So this is the theory of capitalism. So capitalism is the economic philosophy that allows for democracy to work well. Capitalism supports the idea of individual rights, freedom, private ownership, and free markets. There's no perfect implementation of capitalism in the world. What we see in, so-called capitalist countries is big corporations in bed with big governments. This is crony capitalism, or crapitalism, or whatever other name you want to give it. We don't want that. So if I were to run for president of the United States, here are some of the issues that I would run on. The first issue is small government. So Elon Musk put it nicely when he said, what really matters is avoiding monopolies that restrict people's freedom. Government is the ultimate monopoly with no strong feedback loop from customers or the public. So because the government is a monopoly, I would like to make the government as small as possible. I agree with Milton Friedman when he said that we should limit government functions to 1, preserve peace and defend the country, 2, provide a mechanism where individuals can adjudicate their disputes. And 3, protect individuals from being coerced by other individuals. So therefore, I would support keeping the Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, the Department of State, and the Department of Treasury. All of the other departments, I would either abolish them or I would limit them. The Department of Agriculture, gone. Commerce, especially the patent system, gone. Education, for sure gone. Housing and urban development, gone. Labor, gone. Transportation, gone. Veteran affairs, gone. I would limit the Department of Energy, and I would also limit the Department of Health and Human Services. I'm not sure what I would do about Interior. I feel like addressing the problems with the other departments is a way higher priority than limiting Interior. So I might just kind of deal with that one last. The next issue I would run on is democracy reform. I would give everyone 100 democracy dollars that can only be spent on supporting the campaign or the candidate of their choice. This money would drown out the influence of big money in politics, and it seems like a simple, cost-effective solution to that problem. I would support ranked choice voting. This allows people to vote for their first choice, their second choice, their third choice, etc. I hate having to only vote for the lesser of two evils. At least with ranked choice voting, you can vote for who you really want to vote for and still not throw away your vote. I would try to take as much of the partisan subjectivity out of the districting process. I would support something like an impartial computer algorithm that evenly creates districts based on population density and geography. And that's it. I would try to make voting easier, more representative, and more secure. I would explore distributed ledger technologies and other personal identity technologies so that we could offer the ability for people to vote from their phones. I acknowledge this would take time to fully implement, and we would need to keep paper ballots as backups for a while, but I do think it's a worthwhile endeavor. I would lower the voting age. I support the idea that there should not be taxation without representation. And, there are many teenagers out there who are working and paying taxes, but they're currently not able to vote until they're 18. So, several of the founding fathers were teenagers when the Declaration of Independence was signed. So, therefore, I support the idea of lowering the voting age, at least to 16. All right, I don't know how to fix this problem, but Congress cramming unrelated things into key bills is disgusting. I would try to implement something so that Congress just votes on one issue at a time. The next issue I would run on is implementing a solid floor. Jordan Peterson, he popularized the fact that there are hardly any jobs for people who have an IQ that is lower than 87. This is a big problem because this is about 15% of the population. Even the U.S. Army, who wants as many people as possible to join, will not accept people with an IQ less than 83. So what are the chances of those people finding gainful employment in the private sector? Not very likely. So the conservatives will say, well, those people should just work harder. And the liberals will say, well, we should train these people to do the jobs of the future. So both of these ideas have not really worked. Neither side really has a good solution to this problem. And I'm not even sure there is a good solution to this problem. I don't really like the idea of the government trying to solve this problem because the government often just makes problems worse. I'm also not sure that private charity is going to really help all of the people that need help. So it may be the case that this is just the cruel nature of the world, survival of the fittest. If you have a low IQ or some other condition that makes you not marketable in society, you may just be SOL. Even if you have a decent IQ, I believe that more and more jobs are simply going to be gone with the acceleration of automation, AI, robots, and technology. Sure, there will be new jobs created with the advent of new technology, But it seems that the trend is that fewer and fewer people can do the work of more and more people. I get the sense that more and more people are going to be left out of the workforce and made obsolete. I don't pretend that I have the answer to this problem. Universal basic income is an interesting idea, but it has its own problems. For one, I'm not sure if a government-run UBI program will help or make things worse. The money for the UBI would have to come from somewhere. Taxpayers would have to pay for it one way or another, which means more state-sponsored theft. And if UBI ever gets implemented, the government will have the incentive to keep increasing the UBI amount. There will always be candidates who will run on increasing the UBI. Because, of course, giving people free money is popular. And increasing UBI means more taxes, more government control, possibly more inflation, and it could become a bad spiral. It might be the case that technological advances coupled with a free market may do a better job at solving this problem on its own rather than a government-run UBI program. The end point of a hyper-abundant society is that technology becomes so good and produces so much stuff so cheaply that there will be no poverty at all. Goods and services will be so abundant that people will be giving them away. While UBI might not be a perfect solution, I think there might be a case for UBI being a better system than the current welfare system in the US. The main problem with the current welfare programs is that they incentivize people not to work. If you work and make money, you will lose your benefits. So it encourages dependency and long-term use. With UBI, at least there is an argument that it encourages people to work, and it may often increase people's involvement in the workforce. So perhaps as an interim step, I might support a universal basic income for citizens with the idea of replacing the current welfare programs. The universal basic income would apply to all citizens. There would be no means testing, and it would largely be funded by a VAT, or a value-added tax. It would not be funded by printing money. Scott Santens writes a lot about why UBI is a good idea and how it could be implemented. So I could put a link to one of his articles in the show notes. I'm not sure I agree with everything from Scott Santens, but he does make some good points. With a universal basic income, there would be no need for minimum wage, Social Security, or other welfare programs. So therefore, I would eliminate these programs. Another part of the solid floor would be to provide equal opportunity for good education. I have a lot of problems with the public school system, and I strongly favor the idea of school choice. All parents would receive school vouchers for them to send their kid to any school that they want. They would not be limited to the schools in the school district they live in. And then the last part of the solid floor I would want to establish would be to have some kind of basic health care for everyone. I understand this is a complex issue, and I admit that I have not looked deeply into the best way to do this. Similar to the school vouchers, maybe there could be a program where everyone gets healthcare vouchers or something like that. Maybe if I look into this issue further, I will end up coming to the conclusion that it is best for the government to just stop meddling with healthcare altogether. Currently, the healthcare industry is virtually monopolized by the government and a handful of insurance companies. I would push to remove red tape for building new hospitals, and I would eliminate the FDA and the patent system so new drugs could be developed and deployed quicker and cheaper. The next major issue I would run on is to establish sound money. I would end the Federal Reserve, and I would establish a Bitcoin standard. the economy is way too complex for a central entity to control it by manipulating the money supply and interest rates. I would champion policies that more align with the Austrian School of Economics. The next major issue I would run on is criminal justice reform. I would end the war on drugs. I would decriminalize or legalize almost all drugs, gambling, and sex work. I would end no-knock raids, end qualified immunity, and end civil asset forfeiture. I would end cash bail, and I would end private prisons. The next issue I would run on is to simplify taxes. Albert Einstein famously said, the hardest thing in the world to understand is the income tax. So our tax code is way too complicated, and it has all sorts of tax loopholes. I resonate with the idea that taxation is theft, and I hope to get to a point one day where the government does not collect any taxes from its citizens. Until that day, I believe the tax code should be ultra simple. Simplifying the tax code is another complicated issue that I've not looked into in great detail, but I believe it is a worthwhile endeavor. In general, I prefer flat tax over graduated tax schemes. I would also end the favorable tax treatment for capital gains and carried interest over earned income. The last thing I would do for simplifying taxes is to make tax day a national holiday, and I would have the government offer a free TurboTax-like system, so it would be super simple for people to file their taxes. The government theoretically already knows what taxes you should owe, so your taxes should automatically be filled out, and the citizens can just, review it to make sure it is accurate. Or, since the government is probably too inept to pull off a tax solution like this, maybe tax software could be another voucher program where everyone gets tax vouchers that can be used for tax software services, and different companies can compete with each other to provide the best software. Finally, here are some miscellaneous issues I would run on. I would support improving laws so that those who impose costs on third parties pay for it. For example, if you're spewing carbon in the atmosphere, you should pay for that externality. There should be some kind of a carbon tax or cap and trade scheme or something like that. I would end government subsidies, especially the subsidies for the meat industry and the fossil fuel industry. I would require elected officials to place personal financial interests into blind trusts or some similar mechanism so that there are no conflicts of interest. And I would bar anyone from accepting speaking fees or lucrative board positions for personal gain after leaving office. Finally, I would support death with dignity laws. So this about sums up my current political views. That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening. Take care.